I love that K-N-O-W, know to avoid.
No to avoid.
I do big yes lists with this little tiny no to avoid list. I don't like to set people up for failure. Okay, so I'm going to give you some physical details, and I'm also going to tell you the 5 main emotions of each one. Okay, so Vata first, because ether and air is always first in the elements. If we looked at Vata in the body, there's going to be 4 primary organs and 2 tissues, 5 emotions for each one of the doshas I speak of. So the first 2 tissues, okay, we have 7 tissues in the body, and the 2 tissues that are Vata are movable and changing constantly, which is what makes them Vata, bones and nerves. So, you know, grabbing things, doing things, blinking, doing, shifting, feeling, these are all the tissues of Vata. So they do end up with dry or cold bones easy, and dry or cold nerves easy. So I do, like, if I meet somebody who seems a little depleted, I might start prepping them for, like, let's not get osteoporosis. You know, let's like get you juicy where that's not there. Or I'll ask someone if I think their Vata's depleted, I'll ask if there's osteoporosis in their family to see if it's more of a genetic picture that they could really start working on sooner than later. Emotions. Did I say the 5 emotions of Pitta? I did not. I'm going to do that. They're on your page, but follow through is everything. Anger, resentment, envy, anger, resentment, envy, trust, and judgment. All pretty fiery. Then we have Kapha. Kapha tissues first, same as the others. Kapha tissues are going to be liquid. They're 2 liquid tissues. And that's going to be lymph and blood, which are both liquid tissues. So your immune system and your circulatory system as tissues. Okay, waterworks. And same with your 4 organs. All the waterworks. Anything that is about getting excess fluid out of your body or cycling fluid in your body. So getting fluid out of your body, the first organ's bladder. Bladder is Kapha. It's all about making sure you don't flood. You've got to get that excess fluid out if you didn't absorb it. So really helps us to not flood our bodies. Then we have the true waterworks that we spent some time talking about, really, because we talked about electrolytes, which is kidney health. So all about the oceans and being able to maneuver fluid, have the energy to maneuver water even upstream to the heart, you know. And then you have the pericardium. The pericardium is the lubricated sac that your heart sits in. We don't often give as much like education around the pericardium, but actually that lubricated heart is the blanket around your heart that makes sure that it doesn't pump out of your chest over every little thing.
Nice.
So it's like that little, it's that little mama juice that's like, calm down, it's okay, we can handle it, you know. So when someone gets tachycardia, that means they have dry pericardium. Now we would call that Vata pericardium, meaning like it's no longer Kapha, it's become dry, so now it's too Vata. So the pericardium should be wet and Kapha, really juicy, really securing and harnessing. But when it dries up, it shrinks up and it puts pressure on the heart. Things shrink when they dry up, right? So it shrivels up and dries and it puts pressure on the heart and it makes it go bump, bump, bump. When you're out in the sun working so hard without enough water in the garden, having fun. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I need to sit down. So the body just gives you this innate, like, you better sit, you know, let's get some juice here. So that's kind of what that is. And the last one is cardiovascular system. We don't know it as an organ, but everything that is an organ in Ayurveda, same with Tibetan medicine, is considered vital. You can't live without it. So cardiovascular is the liquid, the primary, the seat of health in Kapha is the circulatory system, blood flow. Making sure you're not bleeding out and you're not getting dams in the river, you're not getting too clogged, too thin. Perfect, moderate flow. Kapha is the word of stable. So it's all about stable flow in your blood. And you have 5 main emotions here too. Depression, greed, melancholy, attachment, and grief. Heavy. You can look at those Vata words and see that they're anxious and kind of, you know, fluttery. You can look at the Pitta words and be like, whoa, they're like in your face. Fire is radiant, you know. And those things spread. Like, you know, anger spreads, judgment spreads, you know, envy spreads, just like fire. And then those kaphas, you can see how you can get stuck in the mud, you know. So we ebb and flow through these, so you have to know when. Now, you might want to look at the list, like in my body mapping class, every week, you know, we go through, we just started last week, you know, and every single week we go through, like, okay, pick an emotion you're ready to look at. Okay, now let's look at certain physical symptoms and what do we want to do about those. And you're just like bringing in different tools by just saying, I'm ready to look at that. So you want to look at this list and think about what's been since your childhood symptoms. You know what I mean? And just you know that it's so ingrained in you. And then you want to look at the ones that's like, yeah, I've been depressed before, but it's not like I'm always depressed, you know. So it's healthy if you're saying, I know all of these. I would actually say that's pretty healthy. That means you're paying attention, you understand emotions, you know you've gone through them, you're an adult, you've experienced many things, but you want to look at the ones that you're like, nah, that one is there. It doesn't really go away, or it's maybe my family, you know.
Everything I eat
is on the note to avoid.
Yeah.
Well, it really would be like protein and veggies. I always say that all the time to Kapha. I'm like, your mantra is protein, veggies, protein, veggies, protein, veggies, which means you are taking out the gluten and you're taking out a lot of the dairy. You know, you don't want to see dairy as your main protein. You want to know lentils and quinoa and amaranth are protein. Fourth, a cup of tahini is a protein complete. And then you want to look at lighter meats, you know, like fish. I used to say shellfish, but I'm not such a fan of that anymore on a kind of, you know, there's a lot of toxins now in our shellfish. You know, they're filters for the ocean, so it doesn't really work anymore. Also maybe like you know, looking more at turkey or chicken if you were a meat eater versus, you know, a heavier, oilier meat. So you want to go kind of lean, you know. And you also want to make sure you're not, for something tells me, I don't want you to just call yourself out as a full-on Kapha and then leave this class in a Kapha box, all like, I'm Kapha. See what I mean? Like, you don't just look like you have tons of excess Kapha. You might have a bunch of congestion in you. Maybe you have some of these emotions. Maybe there's some like contentment eating, but it's not all you are. And I think you'd have a hard time convincing me if you came to me as a client and you were just like, I'm all Kapha. I feel like I'd look at you and be all, no. Sorry, I'm just being really honest. I would be all, no. But I would definitely go the distance to be like, come on, let's talk about some Vata. Or let's talk about some Pitta. There's got, you know what I mean? So you might be calling yourself out a little bit on some things that you really want to change. And I totally commend you on looking at those and even speaking it out loud. But I don't think that's all you are. I think there's probably another constitution, another dosha that's even more dominant. Like maybe Vata cold, low blood pressure. That then makes you feel kind of that low circulation of kapha. And you might go for warm foods because you're cold. That's just my sense. So make sure you're really looking at yourselves as combos, you know. Don't put yourself in a little box and then just kind of like, you know, call out anything you think needs to change, and start doing the opposite, you know. But make sure you're like, no, I'm still a whole person.
Is there anyone who is Vata Pitta Kapha?
You can be born Tridoshic.
My sister.
You can be born Tridoshic. She is Tridoshic, yes. Tridoshic sounds great because it is meaning that you were born with Vata Pitta Kapha healthy. There's two forms of Tridoshic. There's the one where you're born with what's called snake, frog, swan, which is basically the healthy. Snake is healthy Vata, frog healthy Pitta, swan healthy Kapha. And so you're born with an innate, really considered balanced, healthy constitution. But it is a constant balancing act. It is not easy to stay balanced when you were born balanced. And you're highly aware of any little imbalance that occurs. There's an ultra sensitivity to imbalance that kind of affects them. You know what I mean? So they have to kind of start, as they get older, they have to be like, where does my Vata go? You know, what kind of symptoms do I get when I'm Vata? And then they have to know when they're Vata and they have to fix the Vata. Then they have to be like, where's my Pitta go? I got to know when I'm Pitta and fix the Pitta. And then, where's my Kapha? I got to fix the Kapha. So they're sensitive, and they have to really get to know all three doshas because they experience life and they get imbalances like anybody else, but they have to kind of chase them around a little bit, you know. They're good at it though. I do find Tridoshics, like, they have an innate concept of what is it to stay healthy, because it's like how they were born more. And that doesn't mean everybody else is unhealthy, so that's a little tricky wording, you know. And they weren't born with nothing going on. It's not that simple. You know what I mean?
I used to, when I was younger, go from yin and yang. So I'd have coffee, then meat. Ice cream, then meat.
So you were ping-ponging.
Yeah, instead of going to like the rice in the middle, I always did one extreme and carried the other.
Yeah.
Kind of knew to go the other direction, but then that kind of wore off.
Yep. So see, there's their own little issues. The other Tridoshic is Tridoshic imbalance. And then I just have to be very graceful with the client on how am I going to make them feel really empowered around the fact that they have an imbalance of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So usually they've got a little bit more going on in their life, a little more health issues going on in their life. Usually if I'm like, is life somewhat complicated? It's not like that's a new idea to them. They're like, yeah, it's been complicated, you know? So they usually know, you know, I can't tell anybody anything they don't know. I'm speaking to them. So usually they're like, yeah, I totally know where you're going with this conversation. Exactly, yeah, you know. So whereas I'm kind of trying to figure out how to say it sweetly and kind of make sure it still feels good, usually they're the ones who are like, just let's cut to the chase. It's been challenging, you know. So then I know I'm a little more on, because you don't find a lot of that, but it's possible. Yeah. Well,